Well there, welcome back to my channel, guys. Yes, I must apologize because I know that I'm not oh gosh, I forgot to take off my mask. I must apologize. I know that I am not uploading videos as frequent since probably last week and before, and the reason being is that I have been doing a lot of things. I've been going through a phase, right? Many a times I'm not in the right frame of mind, and so sometimes it makes it rather hard at times to do certain videos as I would want to, right? This isn't the video I had intended to do, but I'm working with a time schedule, as I would have stated in my video that is an attention to my subscribers. I'm working on a time frame, and so because of that I have to push myself to do a video today, even though I'm not so much so in the right frame of mind. In so doing, I chose to do something simple among the subjects that I have. You guys are going to have to wait for my continuation on the soul of man and the doctrine of hell and so on. You just have to be patient, guys. Those are major subjects. I have to be in the right frame of mind to actually approach them, right? Which I will be soon by God's grace. But nevertheless, let's talk about this this topic that we have here, the cults and the world mission field. I'll be reading from the book Kingdom of the Cults, and from this chapter I'll select some things. I'll read some things from out of it. You guys can download the book on Google, and you can get it on PDF and do additional reading if you so desire. But I find this subject as something, an important subject to talk about, right? Anyways, it reads thus. By the writer Dr. Walter Martin, we have observed in our study of the various cults that they are particularly effective among those in whom the early seeds of Christianity have been planted. It is much easier for cultists to promulgate their doctrines among young Christians, nominal Christians, and those who only have a passing acquaintance with the scriptures. Throughout the United States, the various non-Christian cults are in evidence everywhere. They boldly advertise themselves and eagerly covet the one great prize that all of them desperately seek: prestige and recognition as Christians. In the course of my travels, I learned much about cult methodology and the mission fields, and in contrast to our previous statements concerning their activities established in the United States, the cults generally are happy to remain virtually anonymous until they have established a bridgehead. This is important in an era where a work has already begun or has been functioning for many years. One missionary explained to me how young converts in particular were the prey of such cults as Jehovah's Witnesses Watchtower Organization, and the Mormons, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, two of the most virulent strains of non-Christian cults, and both of which are found on practically every major mission era throughout all of the continents of the world. In addition to their evangelical endeavors, the cults specialize in reaching people in their own language, and it is here that the printing establishments of Jehovah's Witnesses, the Mormons, and the Unity School of Christianity are revealed at their effective best. The average missionary who encounters a Jehovah's Witness in Japan, for instance, can expect to find copies of the Watchtower and Awake magazines translated into the language of the people and dutifully mailed from cult headquarters in Brooklyn, New York. There is also a very real problem of literature to combat these movements. Literature that itself must, by the very nature of cult propaganda, also be in the language of the country in question, and such literature today is virtually unattainable. We learned that Jehovah's Witnesses were making an attempt to convince people that their own translation of the Bible, the New World Translation, is the latest American translation and should be accepted in questionable areas of theology as the best and most recent rendering of the original languages. The informed persons, of course, knows that the Watchtower's translation is accepted as sound only by the Watchtower and those who have not carefully checked its many perverted renderings. But when one is 15,000 miles from home, laboring among people of a foreign tongue, and generally beset by the pressing problems of hostile indigenous religions such as Buddhism, Islam, Shintoism, Taoism, Confucianism, oh Lord, I'm not sure I pronounced that right, Hinduism, etc., it is difficult to check these things, and the Watchtower eagerly supplies their Bible to all interested persons, converts and pagans alike, something the Christian church has found difficult to accomplish even in the 20th century. So Walter Martin is laying out to you the problems that the church have and why the cults in his time has grown so large, because they managed to succeed at where he falls short, right, in providing adequate literature, which is one of the things that Walter Martin points out and so on, right? The startling growth of Jehovah's Witnesses and the astronomical figures in publishing and distribution that the Watchtower accomplishes yearly can only be appreciated when one sees a mission field literally inundated by tracts, pamphlets, Bibles, books, and magazines, all stamped Brooklyn, New York, USA. The world today is hungry to read, and the underdeveloped countries of Asia and Africa will read anything, even Watchtower propaganda, which appears as a torrent in comparison with the trickle of Christian literature currently in circulation. It also becomes apparent, while questioning missionaries, that many of them are disturbed by the fact that Watchtower people always seemingly have enough literature to proselytize Christian converts, but the missionary has little, if any, literature which will answer such cultists, much less evangelize them or their converts. He ended by saying regarding Jehovah's Witnesses that all in all, Jehovah's Witnesses are a growing concern everywhere and a challenge to evangelical Christianity, which desires to win them to a redemptive knowledge of Jesus Christ, and in the process to give every man an answer, a reason of the hope that is in you, Christ in you, the hope of glory. 1 Peter 3 verse 15 and Colossians 1 verse 27. Now he goes on to talk about the Mormons. This may be the only time you ever hear me talking about them. I don't plan to do an apologetics on Mormons, right? I think I stated it early when I start my series on the Jehovah's Witness, because they don't exist much in Jamaica, so I leave that for other apologists to actually handle, right? Now, even surpassing the Jehovah's Witnesses is a rapidly burgeoning missionary effort of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who are called Mormons, boasting a missionary force approaching 23,000 full-time workers and bolstered by a church whose gross income in 1984 was well over $1 billion. The Mormon cult is moving at a rapid pace, particularly in its new mission fields of South America and Africa. Over the dozen years since the previous edition of this book, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has continued its remarkable growth pattern, particularly in underdeveloped and formerly communist countries. The threat from the growth of this false gospel in the 1980s is only exceeded by the threat at the close of the century. Mormon missionary work far surpasses that of the Jehovah's Witnesses, and together the missionary efforts of the two cults present a real and present danger to the spread of the true gospel throughout the world today. The methodology of Mormon missionaries is similar in many respects to that of Jehovah's Witnesses. They too are door-to-door canvassers and tireless, round-the-clock back callers on the contacts previously made either by themselves or by those missionaries who preceded them. Mormon missionaries, unlike those of the Jehovah's Witnesses, come fully equipped with slick multimedia presentations and free copies of the Book of Mormon, Doctrine of Covenants, and Pearl of Great Price, the sacred books that they believe properly interpret the Bible, much like how Ellen G. White is to properly interpret the Bible. Whereas the Jehovah's Witnesses will emphasize the absolute authority of the Scriptures as a supreme criterion for truth, the Mormons will hedge at its juncture, maintaining that the Bible is the Word of God insofar as it is correctly translated. They will insist gently but firmly that the Book of Mormon and the other two sacred books throw light upon the Bible and explain the Bible in the light of restored Christianity and the ministry of the prophet Joseph Smith. In fact, today they insist that the Book of Mormon be called the Book of Mormon be called the Book of Mormon and not a testament of Jesus Christ. In England, where the Latter-day Saints once doubled their membership, they are particularly proud to point out that Brigham Young came from an English background and did missionary work in England himself prior to the assassination of Joseph Smith in 1844. 1844, that date should ring a bell, right, to Seventh-day Adventists. Young returned from England to assume the leadership of the Mormon Church, and some of his wives were English girls from Brigham Young, recruited on his missionary journey. It is not unusual to find second-generation Mormons returning to carry on the family tradition in the country where their parents did missionary work. Now, 1844 was a significant year too. That's the year of the Millerites and so on. Great disappointment. You know the whole works, right? The Mormon missionary approach also differs from that of other cults, particularly Jehovah's Witnesses, in that it emphasizes the need for education, whereas Jehovah's Witnesses don't, preferring to reach a higher strata of intellect, generally speaking, than the Jehovah's Witnesses have been able to attain. From a standpoint of educational background, social graces, and personal habits, which include a quiet, tolerant regard for evangelical Christianity, something lacking most pointedly in the methods of Jehovah's Witnesses. The Mormons make a good impression on prospective converts, and many ex-members of Christian denominations are now the disciples of Joseph Smith and Brigham Young because of this distinctive Mormon emphasis. Now, a typical Mormon missionary approach is orientated around three prime factors. 1. The Mormon Church alone has the marks of true Christianity. It is called the Church of Jesus Christ. It has apostles and prophets. It has a priesthood, Melchizedek and Aaronic, as well as elders and other New Testament practices. Now, the priesthood, you guys should already know, is basically done away. So that alone should tell you that something is entirely wrong with them. The Mormons claim the unique ability to baptize for the dead, 1 Corinthians 15 verse 29, and have sacred extra-biblical literature that interprets the Bible. The Mormons maintain that Christianity is an open apostasy, as evidenced by the rise of Roman Catholicism during the Dark Ages and the various and multiple divisions in Christendom since the Reformation. 3. The outward success of the Mormon Church its enormous prosperity and growth since 1830 in the face of persecutions and ostracism due in part to their own immoral practices of polygamy, one should note, proves conclusively, say the Mormon missionaries, that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the restoration of true biblical Christianity and should be embraced as such. Guys, so since the average person knows very little of church history and even less of the backgrounds of Joseph Smith, Brigham Young, and the early Mormons saints, some of these things will go unchallenged. But if even a general knowledge of the massive contradictions and historical myth-making about the origins of Mormonism is known to a prospective convert, not to mention the Mormons' polytheistic theology, which by definition is not Christian, then the saints have a difficult time. Then the quote-unquote saints, which is the Mormons, have a difficult time indeed defending the maze that is their history and theology. Usually when this occurs, they will depart and never return. And this is one of the reasons why I say that I'm not going to focus much on the Mormons, because in Jamaica, they can never gain much numbers in Jamaica, because Jamaicans are very firm on the belief of one God. Very, very, very firm. Right? And this is why they will not succeed, because the minute a Jamaican hear three gods, they're not going to want to have anything to do with it. So it's a waste of time to me to even go and look to do apologetics on Jamaica. It wouldn't benefit Jamaicans, because tell them that they believe that and they don't want to hear anything more about them. Right? So this is why I say that I'm not going to do much apologetics on the Mormons church. Right, guys? Now, the Reverend Gordon Fraser, who has spent some 50 years working as a missionary among the Navajo Indians in Arizona and New Mexico, has made numerous encounters with Mormon missionaries, and his judgment in this realm is most relevant. The Mormons have striven for years to gain recognition as a Christian body, until within a decade or so, their claim has been denied by even the most liberal groups of professing Christians. Lately, however, with the general lowering of Christian standards of thoughts, and with the remarkable build-up in the public press and on the radio, the Mormons have achieved their goal in the thinking of the general public. But are the Mormons Christians? If the term covers all who use the name of Christ in their titles or in their teachings, we would have to allow Mormons their claim. But we would have to include with them the Jehovah's Witnesses, Christian Scientists, and most of the other metaphysical cults, as well as Unitarians, Universalists, Baha'is, and a host of so-called liberal adherents to the various Christian denominations, which were originally completely orthodox. All of these refer freely to Christ, freely to Jesus Christ, and use quotations from the Bible to support their views. But these, along with Mormons, deny what we consider to be indispensable tenets of true Christianity. Right? Now, the author says a number of other things, right, which I will put on the screen. But I'd like to say that the Seventh-day Adventist Church rightly is the same as many of them. While granted that they are closer to Christianity than these groups, the methods are basically the same, right? And they too as well have a departure from Christian church. Had Walter Martin known more or had the correct knowledge of the Jehovah's Witness when he had researched them, no, of Seventh-day Adventists, when he had researched them in his time, I can guarantee you that their name would have been in this listing. Unfortunately, he realized the truth about the Seventh-day Adventists, right? And before he could have actually penned something on them, he died before he could get to do that. Right? So he said in word that he was very much mistaken where the Seventh-day Adventists is concerned. but he didn't get to pen it. Death came upon him before he could have done so. I just thought I should add that part for you guys. Now what Mr. Fraser says is of course a sound evaluation of Mormon practices, and we are forced to his conclusion when he says Mormons, Christians uninformed as to the true nature of Mormon's teachings will defend their Mormon neighbors. Many Christians rather uninformed as to the nature of Mormon's teachings will defend their Mormon neighbors as good, clean living, pious and honest folks. They will point to their wonderful relief practices of the Mormon church. They will extol the thrift and industry of the Mormons as a whole. All these things we recognize and appreciate as valuable contributions to society. We cannot criticize these things. These virtues do not make one a Christian. Satan is delighted when his followers put up a good appearance. We insist that these virtues have nothing to do with one's acceptance before God. If one has never yielded to God's claim concerning his Son, Jesus Christ, when Christians fail to demonstrate the above virtues, they are coming short of God's purpose. But these are the byproducts of the Christian life. It is the same argument that I would raise with the Seventh-day Adventists. They contribute much to society, but these contributions in no way make them Christians in the sense of the word. Sure, it make them quote-unquote good people, right? But it does not make them Christians in the sense of the word. Are you going to tell me that some guy makes some positive contribution to society, and those positive contributions that he made to society, that make him a Christian? So what if Adolf Hitler, right, had made some good contribution to society after the atrocities that he did? Would that by definition make him a Christian? Certainly not. And this is the argument that the writer is here making, not just for Mormons, but this would go for every other cult as well. We must look beyond the appearances of Mormonism and its missionaries. We must consider the fruits of its tree, not only its social benefits and moral reform, but its doctrine, which, as has been noted, is as much fruit from the tree of religion as is the practice of that religion. In the case of Mormons, their doctrinal fruit is corrupt, denying as they do the Christian doctrine of the Trinity, the deity of our Lord, and salvation by grace through justifying faith in Jesus Christ. Ephesians 2 verse 8 to 10. The Jehovah's Witnesses and the Mormons share one thing in common. Both are dedicated opponents of historical Christianity. Although they utilize the name of Christ and the methods of Christianity where witnessing and evangelism are concerned, the content of Christianity, which by necessity revolves about the person of Jesus Christ, is either ignored or redefined by them. In the end, it is the gospel of another Jesus, another spirit, and the product of that supreme architect of religious devilry, who delights in arraying himself and his ministers as angels of light. Of him Jesus Christ says he's a liar and a murderer from the beginning, Satan, the god of this age. There is scarcely a mission field of the world that has not felt the impact of these two major cult systems, and we would be foolish indeed in discussing the problem of missionary activities of the cults to ignore their methodology and their already fantastic accomplishments in its relatively short amount of time. Now onwards, the writer goes on to state their methods in how they are their methods that they employ, which grants them success in their evangelizing and so forth, right? All of this can be found in a particular video on my series on cults, right? I will find the particular video that will tell you how the tactics that cults actually employ. You can go and check out that video, because trust me, every single cult, whether religious or not, employ some of basically the same tactics, right? So you can go check out those things. With that being said, I end this video. I do hope you enjoyed this rather lengthy video. If you did, you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. Bye bye now.